Hello, hello. Welcome to day 2 of our Ellie and Mac Duchess coat sew along. I'm super excited. We're actually getting sewing today. Yay! Um, sorry for the really harsh lights. I have fluorescent light. I found that over the years my eyes are not very great, and hopefully that. Oh, there we go. And then I need a little bit of extra lighting. But look at how white they make my teeth look. So bonus. Okay, so today we are adding the darts to our bodice and sewing up our bodice main and lining, and adding sleeves. So I'm really excited about this. It should go fairly uneventful. Hopefully. The first thing I want to say before we get into it is make sure that you add some interfacing to your main front bodice pieces, so that when you add your buttons, it gives it a little bit more stability. You're going to add it to both front pieces on the wrong side of your fabric. Make sure that you follow your interfacing guidelines and instructions. They're all a little different, but that's just going to help give it a little bit more stability. All right, so let's get right into it, shall we? I think we're ready. All right, so if you've done that, the next thing you need to make sure you do is that you marked your dart markings on the wrong side of your fabric, because what you're going to do then is you're going to fold it so that that line in the middle is on the halfway point, and then you're going to take it and we're going to sew down this side line. We're going to start at the end here, and then when we get about a couple inches from the point, we're going to shorten our stitch length. So let's start here. Okay, so we're going to just do a straight stitch. I'm going to actually do it in my middle so I can use my guide on my. Okay, so we're going to just do a couple of forward stitches, and then we're going to back stitch a little bit just to help. There we go. Hold those stitches in place, and then we're going to stitch up. And here, just about 1.5 inches from the point, now we're going to go through and we are going to shorten our stitch length. Let me see if it recommends a stitch length. Where's my mouse? My mouse is gone. Oh no. Oh, there we go. Sometimes I think lint gets in it, because I think it just says shorten it. Yeah, it just says reduce stitch length. Okay, so I'm just reducing it by a little bit. It was, maybe I'll do 1.6. Okay, and then what we need to do now is you need to sew off the point. And then it says for a few stitches. Lift the foot, and we're going to pull the bodice aside, and we're going to trim so that there's enough thread left that we can tie a knot, a double knot. It got twisted all around. It's okay. All right, so we're just going to tie a double knot into that, and that's just going to hold it so the stitch won't go anywhere. Just for good measure, I'm going to do a triple knot. I am not the knot master in my family, so I tend to overdo my knots a little bit. All right, so now we've got a dart sewn in, but before we iron it, I'm just going to do it to all of them because I hate going back and forth from the iron. I'm a let's just get it done kind of person. So we're going to do the same thing to the other front bodice piece, just making sure that that middle line is lined right up. Starting at the bottom, we need to reset our stitch length. Okay, so it was at 2.5 and I went to 1.6. Okay, forward a couple stitches, back a couple just to lock those in. Forward until about 1.5 inches, and then we're gonna shorten our length, our stitch length. Run off. I'm gonna lift my needle, pull my threads out, double knot it. It is quite windy here right now. And I was so excited to get this started sewing this that I bribed my kids with ice cream. Usually I just do the sew alongs during the weekend, and I usually sew only at night when my kids are in bed. But I told them, I said, okay, Dad's going to be home in like 15 minutes. If you can quietly, I gave him unlimited Minecraft time. I told him ice cream. I said, just let Mom sew for a little bit. I'm super excited for this one. But, so we might have a visitor. Okay, so again, with the back bodice piece, we're going to do the same thing. Just line those up, forward a few stitches, back a few stitches. There we go. Okay, now we're going to shorten our stitch length. Run off the point. I did more than a few stitches there. That's okay. Double knot. I'm sure this is an important step, but not one I think I would normally do if I was just sewing this up and not on video. Okay, so we did one. We need to do both sides. I think looking at the picture of it, I'm wondering if you only need to do one side. Okay. Sorry, don't mind my arm. That's kind of weird though, right? To just do one side. Let's check the pattern piece. I don't know. I'm doing two. I guess I'll just tell you later if it's wrong. Okay. Let's get this back. All right. I feel like if you just do one, it would look uneven. Oops. All right, same thing. Forward, backwards, forwards, and shorten the stitch length. Nice, nice, nice. Okay. So double knot. My threads are getting shorter and shorter. Alrighty, so that's the back. And now we need to do the same thing to the front lining, or to the lining pieces. All right, so here's our back lining pieces. I'll line those up. Okay, here we go. Front or forward, backward. Oof. Shorten the stitch length. Double knot. I think I need to learn video editing to edit out the parts where I'm actually using my machine, so you don't have to hear the loudness. But I don't know. I kind of like videos where you sew them along with the person as they're sewing, because then you don't have to pause. Or if you do have to pause, not quite as much. And maybe if you're sewing along too, then I guess you wouldn't hear my machine, hopefully. Oh. Oops. Okay. Forwards, backwards. Make sure this thread is out of the way. There we go. Okay, and then we need to shorten our stitch length. Pull it out, leaving enough thread to tie it. One, two. Okay, so there's the back pieces done. Let's just quick finish these front pieces. Shorten the stitch length. Double knot. This is the thing that I hate about sewing things with liners. It's just that you get done and you think, yay, I'm done. And then you realize, no, you're only halfway. You have to do the liner too. All right, last dart. So, starting at the wide end, do regular stitch, forward, backwards a couple of stitches. Shorten the stitch length, stitch off the corner, leave long enough tails to tie a knot. You know, though, I wonder, is a double knot, is that 4 ties or is that just 2 ties? Like, is that a knot and then doing a second time as a double knot? Or is when you do it twice, that's considered a knot, and then the third time is a triple knot? Or is and not in half. I don't know. Silly things I come up with while I'm sewing. Okay, so next what we need to do, not throw that around. We need to take our dart piece, our piece that we sewed the dart in, and we need to let me make sure. We need to press the dart up and then down from the wrong side of the fabric. And then we're gonna flip it and press it on the right side and then again on the wrong side. Okay, so let me pull this up so that I can see that you can see what I'm doing. Okay. So we'll come over to our iron. All our pieces here. And we're gonna sew up towards the top. So we'll fold the dart forward or towards the top, and then we'll sew it again down towards the waist. And then we'll flip it over, or not sew it, iron it, and then we'll iron it again from the front. And then one more time from the back. So your piece should look like this. Okay, so we'll do that to all our pieces now. Okay, iron up, and then iron down. And from the front. And then again from the back. All right, same with the back bodice. Except for the back bodice, it needs to go left or right. It can't go up or down. So let's see. All right, the back bodice, I guess we're just going to do left and right. And then we'll just pick a side. We'll do it. Towards the inside, I guess. Okay, and then the same thing, the other side. I'm doing it towards the arm and then towards the back, or the middle, I guess I would say. Okay, and then press that on the right side of the fabric. I accidentally pressed some wrinkles in there, so I gotta make sure when you're pressing that your fabric is nice and smooth and not. All right, so, oh, I gotta press from the back again. All right, so our bodice now looks like, or our back bodice now, the darts look like that. So those are the lining pieces. We'll put those aside for a second. Let's do the inner line or the outer. So same thing, we're going to go, I'm doing the back first, so we'll go towards the arm, away from the arm, towards the middle. Okay, same thing with the other one. Towards the arm, towards the middle, and then press the front. Okay. Same thing now with the front bodice pieces. We're going to go up towards the shoulders, down towards the hem, come to the front, iron that. And the same from the back side now. Okay, and then one more dart to press. And then we're ready to start sewing. Okay, up towards the shoulders, down towards the hem, front, back. Alrighty. Just gonna do this front one more time because I flipped up. Alright, so now we are going to start to construct the bodice. All right, so what we need to do is we're going to place the bottom bodice, or the back of the bodice, right sides up. And then we're going to place our front bodice pieces right sides together with the back bodice piece. So we'll just do one at a time. We're going to now align the raw edges at the shoulder, and we'll sew that. I had it. I think Ellie and Mac usually uses a 3/8 inch seam allowance. I wish the seam allowance would be put like with the first step of sewing, like this is what you need to do. Erg. Okay. Every time I go to sew something, I always have to look up the seam allowance because I look at it and then I forget it. Oh yeah. Okay, seam allowance is a 1/4 inch for thicker fabric. Size up and use a 3/8 inch. Okay, so I'm just going to use a 1/4 inch because I do not have thicker fabric. So I need to move this aside for a second. I'm not finished with it. I'll need it for gathering stitches. Pull this guy out. Alrighty. So now what we're going to do is we're going to sew a 1/4 inch along the raw edges of the shoulder piece. And then we need to sew. We need to line the sides up. And so 1/4 inch along those sides, making sure your dart is pointed down. All right, so that's one side. And we need to repeat with the other side. I'm all over the place. Okay, here we're at the step down. Okay, perfect. Just making sure I'm on the right steps. Telling you the right things. All right. Again, line the shoulder seams, the raw edges of the shoulders up. And then 1/4 inch seam allowance along here. If you are using a regular sewing machine, I would definitely recommend doing a stretch stitch. For this, I would probably do a triple stretch and then go back through and reinforce those seams. This on the seam allowance, reinforce it with a zigzag stitch. Totally up to you. Okay, same thing, we need to match up those sides. Making sure our dart is pointed down. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay. So now, these scissors. I don't know where my pink ones are. I guess I stuck with these for now. So now the bodice, the outer bodice piece is all put together. What we need to do is we need to do the same thing that we just did to the outer bodice piece to the liner. So putting our back right sides up. Match right sides together. Line up those shoulder seams, or raw edges of the shoulder, and then stitch right along here with a 1/4 inch stitch. Or 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, and then lining up the raw edges of the side. So here's the shoulder, here's the side. We're just going to stitch along here, making sure dart point is pointing down. 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, now we just need to do the same thing to the other side. So right sides together, lining up those shoulder seams, 1/4 inch seam allowance. And same thing to the sides. right, so now our bodice and bodice liner are fully constructed. We are just going to add our sleeves and then we'll be all done for today. Okay. All right, so with the sleeves, when you were cutting it, there were some gathering marks that you needed to mark on it, on your sleeve pieces. Because what we need to do is we need to sew a gathering stitch, because they're going to be slightly gathered at the shoulder, which helps when you're using fabric that doesn't have a lot of stretch. When it's got some gather, it kind of creates a little bit of a stretch so that it gives it some room to move instead of being a solid, you know, if you've got a solid stitch and your fabric can't move, getting your arm in there is not fun. And then it's just not comfortable because you don't have the full range of motion. So the gathering stitch will help with that. So what we need to do is, hopefully you have marked, see if you can see it from here. I keep losing my mouse. Okay, so here, I'll show you in this camera. You should have marked your gathering stitches on each side of your sleeve. And then we're just going to make a quick, easy stitch. So starting at the gathering part, what I like to do when I have to gather or ruffle is I just lengthen my stitch length as much as possible. I'm going to go here. So I just do it to a 5 and then so long from one mark to the other. Now, when you get to the end, you don't want to trim those short. You want to have a nice long tail on those, because then what you'll do is you'll actually pull the tail. So I'll show you that here in a second. We need to do that to all the sleeve pieces. Okay, so you don't want to back stitch. You don't want to cut the threads. You want them nice and long. One more. All right, now we're done with this machine. I will get it out of our way. So now what we need to do is we need to fold our sleeves in half, right sides together. So here's our sleeve. We're going to fold it in half, right sides together, matching up those points here at the tip of your sleeve, or at the end of your shoulder, and then at the bottom. And we're just going to sew that together, 3/4 inch seam allowance. Or, sorry, 1/4. And earlier I said use a stretch stitch. I guess that kind of depends on what kind of fabric you're using. If you're not using a fabric that has any stretch to it, then just a regular stitch would be fine, but you want to just make sure that you still finish it with a zigzag. Okay, same thing here, right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance. We're just going to sew down. We're going to go from down to the cuff. Okay. And like I said, just when you think you're done, then you remember it's lined and you have to do 2 more. All right, this one's easier to tell right sides together because it's patterned. So right sides together, so down along 1/4 inch. And then 1 more. So when you're finished, your sleeve should look like this. It should have the seam right here. And then this should be open with your gathering stitch right there at the top. Okay, so let's do the other side. Right sides together, lining up those raw edges. And so down the sleeve to the cuff using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. My stripe matching is non-existent in this one. Every time I see someone with perfect pattern matching, I'm just like, you're a wizard. Teach me your ways. Okay, so now that we've got our sleeves sewn together, we need to attach them to our bodice. And then we're done. So what we need to do is we need to turn the sleeves right side out. And then the lining sleeves will go on the lining bodice and the outer sleeves on the outer bodice. So what we need to do is we need to put the sleeves right sides together. So I'm going to tuck them in this way. And then we need to line the hem from the seam from your sleeve and the seam from your side. You're going to line those up. And then what I like to do, let's see what they say. Okay. So what I like to do is I like to find the middle of the sleeve and clip that to the shoulder seam because we know that those are going to have to, we want those to match together. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to 1-to-1 line the sleeve up until I get to the start of my gathering stitches. And that'll tell me how much fabric I need to gather. So it looks like this. I've got it clipped at the hem for the side and the bottom of the sleeve, the top of the middle sleeve, and then I've got it lined up a 1-to-1, so it's not getting stretched at all at the bottom from the side seam up until I get to the gathered. And then when I get to the gathered, I can see that there's more fabric on the sleeve than there is on the bodice piece. So we're going to take one of our gathering stitch threads and we're just going to lightly gather it. So that means we're just going to kind of pull on it and push the fabric down a little bit until it's nice and even at a 1-to-1 with the rest of our fabric. And then we'll just clip it so our gathering doesn't want to move. And then the same thing with the other side here. Just lightly gather it. It's not a huge gather, so it's not like a ruffle. It's just a nice, gives it a little extra room to move. Okay, so then we'll clip it so the gathering doesn't move. And then what we need to do is just sew along the outside of this sleeve around in the loop here using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So here's our sleeve, right sides together with our bodice piece. We've got some gathered pieces here just to close up the length of the sleeve so it matches with the bodice. Okay, and we just need to sew it around now. 1/4 inch seam allowance. I want to make sure those gathering stitches are even and not too bunched up in one space. Okay. So the reason why I kind of start and stop so much is I'm just trying to make sure that my fabric isn't bunched on each other or wrinkled up. So you should have just a nice little light gathering at the top here. Nothing too crazy, but just a little bit. Okay, so now we need to do the same thing to the other sleeve. So let's just find the halfway point now. Okay, tuck it in to the bodice so right sides are together. Matching the shoulder with the halfway and the side seam with the seam from the sleeve. And then just 1-to-1, so no stretching till we get to where our gathering stitches start. Same thing with the other side. Okay. Now we're going to lightly pull. So you're not going to yank, just a little pull on one of the threads. You're really more sliding the fabric along the thread than you are pulling the thread, but just to get a nice light gather there so that it's a good 1-to-1 ratio. Clip that. Same thing to the other side. Okay. Clip that. And then we're just going to go around again and sew around those raw edges for the sleeve and the bodice. The sleeve and the bodice match. Neat. Sorry, I thought I heard crying. But I think my husband took the kids to the park. Okay, so now the outer bodice for our Duchess jacket is all done. And we just need to attach the sleeves to the lining. I'm just making sure these gathering threads are coming out because we don't want them making an appearance. Okay, perfect. Yay! All right, so same thing. We're gonna put the bodice inside out, or wrong side out. Put the sleeve, that's right side. We're gonna find the halfway point. Okay, tuck it in. Matching up the halfway point with the shoulder seam. Matching up the sleeve seam with the side seam. Going 1-to-1 around until those gathering stitches start. And then lightly gather, pulling in one thread. Until it's a good 1-to-1. On both sides. The reason why I like to do it this way from halfway and halfway is so that I am sure that it's a good even gather on each side instead of just like all gathered right here and then nothing here. So you definitely don't have to do that. It just helps me make sure that it's more even. Okay. And then same thing, just sew around those raw edges, attaching the sleeve to the bodice. using 1/4 inch seam allowance. Right, so nice light gather on that sleeve, and then one more sleeve. Okay. Halfway point, tuck it into the bodice, right sides together, matching the halfway point with the shoulder seam. And the seam on the sleeve with the side seam. Okay, matching 1 to 1 without stretching till we get to those gathering stitches. Clip that on each side. Okay, and then lightly gather till those sleeve lengths are even. Slightly a little bit more. Okay, just push them around, make sure they're even throughout and not just in one area. Okay, clip that so it doesn't move on you. Same thing to the other side. Yeah, I did too much on that one. I got a little gather happy. Okay, just spread that out a little bit. Clip that, and then sew around those raw edges, attaching the sleeve to the bodice. You want to make sure the raw edges of the gather are lined up with the raw edges of the bodice. Oh no. My clip got stuck on the gathering stitch. It's okay. Anyways, you want to make sure the raw edges of the bodice and the gathering stitch or the gathering area line up, because if you have a fold in the gathering, it just looks a little funky. But the nice thing about gathering and ruffles and things like that is they hide a lot of things. So I kind of like when I see them, I'm kind of like, oh, phew. All right. And that is it. We've got our bodice for the outside and the lining all put together. Some nice light gathering on the sleeves there. So now that our bodice is put together, Tomorrow we will be putting together our skirt. We'll be attaching the bodice to the skirt, and we will also be, oh, that's it. We're just going to put together the skirt and attach it to the bodice. So we need to do it again just like this. We're going to construct basically a whole outer coat and then a whole lining coat, and then we'll put them together later. So tomorrow we're just going to put our skirt together, and then we're going to attach it to the bodice. All right? Pardon me. Thank you so, so much for joining me today. We got a lot done. I know it took a little bit longer, but it's because there's the lining, so everything you do is double. But we got it done. That's kind of probably the hardest bit, or the longest bit, is just because there's so much to it and there's so many parts. But now, now that it's all done, it should be downhill from here. I'm super excited, and I will see you tomorrow when we put together our skirt. Bye.